411 Live.
Where you can learn about issues that impact us every day. State of world, 411 Live.
Real people, real talk.
Made to help people in our community in every way. For your girl, 411 Live.
Some sources say human trafficking is the second leading crime worldwide. And it is everywhere. In Milwaukee, we're sometimes referred to as the hub of sex trafficking, but you can find it in every county of Wisconsin. Hello, I'm Beverly Taylor. Thank you for tuning in. This is the 411 Live, Real People, Real Talk. We are embarking on a multi-part project dealing with different aspects of human trafficking, specifically sex trafficking, and also the healing from the trauma that it can cause its victims. Our goal is to bring more awareness to this subject, and of course, we want to also help continue the discussion, the conversation around the issue. Today's topic is sex trafficking and the criminal justice system. Now, I have a special guest here, Jennifer Williams, former sensitive crimes prosecutor for the Milwaukee County DA's office, specializing in sex trafficking. This woman is good. On her last day as a prosecutor, she got a guilty verdict in a child trafficking case. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction.
And thank you for your interest in this. This is an issue that is growing, and awareness seems to be growing a little bit, but not to the magnitude that it needs to be. You have a passion for this issue, and you had a passion for these cases. Tell me why.
I don't remember exactly what drew me to it, but I was always very interested in prosecuting sex crimes because of the resilience of the survivors. Mm-hmm. You think about a sexual assault, especially of children. And when I started doing delinquencies. So in a very typical sense, it was very, very young child victims with older children within either their family or neighborhood constellation. So you'd have these really, really young children reporting sexual assaults for which they had zero context. They didn't realize the trauma it had caused them, the psychological or emotional damage, and they would talk about it in very concrete terms. Mm-hmm. I then transitioned to sensitive crimes in terms of adult criminal prosecutions, and the victims were no less resilient. Now, when you think about a human trafficking case, sex trafficking specifically, mm-hmm. you essentially have a victim who has been sexually assaulted over and over and over and over and over and over. And one of the ideas that I had and had hoped to be able to achieve in my criminal career was to issue a case where I was able to charge an offender with sexual assault as party to a crime, because every single date, I'm using air quotes,
right,
that a victim survives is really a rape.
That's true.
And so you think about the trauma that a human trafficking victim has survived, and it is just probably the most awe-inspiring, beautiful expression of human resiliency I've ever seen. And the survivors have this uncanny ability to be able to read someone before they're even through the door. And they have that ability because they've had to do it so many times with so many Johns, with so many pimps. They have to protect themselves by being able to know what you're going to do before you do it. Know your intentions, your spirit, your heart, your depth of depravity when they're alone in a room with a man who has money and has the mindset of, I'm going to give you this money to do whatever I want to your body.
Yeah.
And then they have to walk out of the room with that.
Wow. Yeah. Well, having that, you saying that, them being able to read people, for a victim or survivor to trust you to prosecute this case and them to testify against this trafficker, they're reading you.
Absolutely.
They have to trust you to put themselves on the line.
Absolutely.
So you had a job to do to gain that trust.
I did a great deal, behind the scenes. I knew this about them. So I did a great deal of work on myself so that I could walk into a room confidently with humility. Mm-hmm. There was nothing fake, nothing artificial about me. Well, except maybe my hair and makeup, right?
Right.
But so that when the presence I exuded to them mm-hmm. was immediately, this girl's got nothing to hide. Period.
Wow. Yeah. Now, you're prosecuting all these cases. I guess you learn a lot about traffickers and their tactics and how they, pull in those victims. What are some of the things that they do?
Well, before I answer that question, I want to tell you a little bit about why I learned this.
Okay.
And think about in a criminal trial, essentially, for a jury to understand what happened, you have to reenact and help your witnesses relive in real time what the crimes were. And you do that in the context of proving something really interesting, which is intent. You have to prove the criminal intent of the offender. So in a sense, you have to really understand what they were doing, why they were doing it, what tactics they were using. You have to get in their mind. And it's if you can get to that level of prosecution, it's quite a ride. But being able to bridge the gap for the jury between what they think is reality. And often a lot of us, what we think about this reality is they're just prostitutes.
Yeah.
They wanted to do this. It's the oldest profession, which I would say what I think about that, but one of the rules is I can't swear. You really have to get to the heart of where these guys are coming from. Mm-hmm. And I prosecuted women for it too, so I don't mean to be sexist when I say that. And so the tactics they use are, quite frankly, not all that different than the tactics people use in business every day, in influencing other people, in controlling women in the context of a domestic violence relationship. It's nothing all that unique. I'll answer your question, I guess, in a sense, and tell you about a debrief I did with one of my offenders. And okay. He said that he had been in prison on a sexual assault of a child case. Trafficking, pimping never had occurred to him. And he met another gentleman in prison who was engaged in that life. And he told us that he read 21 Laws of Power and The Art of Seduction. And he used that every single day. These guys are so smart. They are nothing short of brilliant, in my experience. They are smarter than your average person on the street. It's remarkable.
If only they would use those skills for legal means.
We would have no unemployment. We'd probably have the cure for cancer. And I mean that in sincerity.
Yeah.
And I would tell judges that in sentencing. You have no idea how smart this man is sitting in front of you and what a profound waste it is for our society that he has to go to prison.
Speaking of that, having him in the courtroom on trial, and usually at sentencing anyway, they usually speak. But in that whole presentation of the trial, if they get on the stand or whatever, that power of persuasion, and I guess that is really kicking in high gear for those guys to persuade the jury, the judge, that I'm just an ordinary guy. I would never do this. She's a precious angel. I would never hurt her. I mean, I'm sure that that's being played out.
Every single time.
Yeah.
I had been in prosecution long enough. I was experienced to cross-examine them and engage them. And I became fairly adept at being able to stay a step or two ahead of them.
Mm-hmm.
But they're good. They're very impressive.
Wow. Let's talk a little bit about the victim. But we're getting close to the break, so we're getting so close that let's just go ahead and take it. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the victims in these cases.
Human trafficking is a global issue that is happening locally. This is a problem that we cannot ignore.
Being so scared on that hotel bed and wish I had my mommy. Going back into that feeling of, man, what am I getting myself into?
She rests her head on the prison to which she's chained.
I'm standing there and I can't move. I can't go nowhere, I'm stuck.
Drug into this spider's web, and she can't untangle herself to freedom.
Him telling me how pretty I am and what I can do to trick guys out of money and what I need to do and how much money I need to bring back, and him making me change into different lingeries to take pictures of me to put me on Craigslist. Now I'm a product to be sold.
Beneath this ground we walk is a hell of movement in a forced direction. Gridlocked, traffic lights, sex, currency, bodies, stock, fear, monopolized, auction, blocks.
Another job, he come another one, and just being sold over and over and over and over.
Minds groomed to be immune to pain.
And you used to it, and you just lay there.
Numb, desensitized, innocence, drained.
I went from that scared little girl, from the foster care, from being molested by my stepbrother, by my foster brother, to being a lonely little girl stuck in a house, so scared with my mother, to being trafficked.
Welcome back. Joining me, Jennifer Williams, former prosecutor with the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office, specializing in sex trafficking cases. We were talking earlier, and we were just kind of segueing into the victims. We talked about the trafficker, how persuasive the whole bit, and luring the victims. In the court cases, you have to gain their trust. They've sized you up. The victim gets on the stand. What's that dynamic of them speaking with the trafficker sitting there looking at them?
I never approached any case with the idea that I had the ability to break down the extraordinary connection that a trafficker had developed and cultivated with a victim. And so when a victim would come into the courtroom, I knew that I needed the jury to see that. And so I often would ask a lot of questions just starting out to help a victim tell their truth. One of the first cases, and probably the most impactful ones that I had, was with a 14-year-old girl who had recruited another over the course of a weekend and were busted at the Days Inn on 6th Street. the pimp that was involved, the trafficker, I should say, had extraordinary influence over this 14-year-old girl. She was completely in love with him. I also knew, based on her background from records I had access to, that she had no one else in the world. She was extraordinarily vulnerable. She had an abuse and neglect history that would devastate the normal person. And somehow she had survived it. She was so smart. She was so strong. She was so funny. And she had developed what I think, and I'm not a psychologist, but this kind of Stockholm syndrome relationship with him, where she very much identified with him. She told me that she liked obtaining money and giving it to him, so that when they were out, it looked like he had money to take care of her. She was on the stand, and one of the first questions, I knew I wasn't going to get her on my side, and that was fine. But I thought I could probably, since she was 14, get her talking long enough that she'd get tired and break her script. And so we started the whole conversation in terms of direct examination, talking about how much she loved him. And I remember asking her a question, I'll paraphrase, of, what is your relationship to this man sitting in the courtroom? And she looked at him and she said, he's my whole world.
Oh, wow.
Now, she had been picked up on a KPS and living at detention, so that she was brought into a courtroom at age 14 to testify for me in handcuffs, and still was not willing to break that connection with him, that he was her whole world. And I believe that she believed that, because she had nothing. Without him, she had nothing. She had a couple of books in a jail cell at detention. She didn't have any clothes. She didn't have any family that at least was going to take care of her. And so as we proceeded in the direct, I was really getting frustrated with her, because she was outsmarting me, and I couldn't break her. I wasn't trying to break her, but I couldn't break her party line, right? And so I started asking her about all the dates that she had done. And I was really thinking, I'm going to lose this case, because she's proving his position.
What he's saying,
right? That this was all her idea. He didn't know, he was innocent. He just wanted to take care of her, blah, blah. And I asked her a question about, what was it like to go into a room with all those adult men and have sexual intercourse with them? And she looked at me and she said, I carry a piece of them, each one of them, with me in my heart. And I thought to myself, and I know the rules, no swearing, right? But I thought right then.
Right.
And I thought, I just lost this case. And I was like a deer in headlights. And for a moment, I just stopped and I had nothing to say. I didn't know how to redirect. I had nothing. She wasn't done talking.
Okay. That was just a pause.
She paused, and I lost my bearings. And then she says, this is probably the moment that I decided human trafficking was what I needed to do for the rest of my life. She says, and it's like poison inside of me.
Oh, wow.
14 years old. For the rest of her life, she will carry those memories, that trauma, the injustice, the lack and loss of innocence.
And she's just 14.
Just 14. And when she said that, I knew I had won.
Right. Right. You're listening to us talk about this, and I'm sure you have questions, you have concerns, you have comments. Let us know. We want to hear it, because I want you to be part of this. That story is incredible. Incredible. We were talking earlier before this podcast, and we were talking about the fact that sex trafficking, this is just a enormous industry. But you were saying that we could cut it at its knees if we would take care of one thing, and we're not talking about it, and that's the demand. Talk about that a little bit.
The statute for child trafficking allows you to issue a charge of child trafficking against anyone who obtains, transports, facilitates, harbors a child for the purpose of a commercial sex act, which means that anyone involved with this child engaged in commercial sex acts is guilty of that crime, whether they are the trafficker, the supply, or the demand side. It's probably one of the best statutes the Wisconsin legislature has ever written, because it is not only specific, but it doesn't discriminate in terms of the people involved with the crime against the child. And I thought that was wonderful. So I issued that charge against a John once. And I remember being shocked at the response. I walked into a courtroom and people treated me like I was the crazy one. Oh, yeah. And then I realized...
Because you had charged this person.
Right. And I learned later I was the first person in the state of Wisconsin to issue a child trafficking offense against a John. And I thought, that sounds insane, because we can play a cat and mouse game or cops and robbers with traffickers as long as we want to do it. Every single one that we send to prison will have one or two more in their place. The financial incentive to be involved in trafficking is huge. And because we have gotten such low sentences, the cost is small. And you have a lot of traffickers who come from areas where there's little other opportunity, certainly not one with that return on investment.
Right.
If we just want to talk about basic business, the demand, because it's not that hard to drive down National Avenue in the 20s and see the girls out there working, see the women, see the children. $25 to satisfy that need for sexual gratification that's completely faceless, anonymous. Or go on Craigslist. It used to be Backpage. Answer an ad that sells you the idea that this is something women are interested in or want to do. And I'm not going to say that there aren't women who consider this a profession and are proud of their profession, because I haven't met any of them. I've only met victims. But the devastation to a victim engaged in this criminal conduct is nothing like I've ever seen. I mean, a sexual assault just one, it really strikes at the core of your personhood. It's the most intimate crime. You think about a murder or homicide, the crime scene is the room, or, the street corner.
Right.
As a sexual assault victim, the crime scene's your body.
And you walk with it every day.
You live in the crime scene for the rest of your life. And so the trafficking victims are just on another level of, the brutality, and then, the depravity and the potential for violence and the risk. The stories they told me about things that they had experienced, it's just, I can't imagine. I can't imagine.
So society's attitude about the John is like, boys will be boys?
I don't know, because I can't understand it. I think if people got serious about demand, we wouldn't have such a problem.
Right.
And if commercial sex weren't so cheap and easy without consequence, we wouldn't have to be talking about the traffickers, because we'd be talking about the real problem, which is that people think that it's okay to buy sex.
Wow. But we're not getting anywhere cutting the demand.
Not right now.
Do you see it happening anytime soon?
I don't know if the men in charge have a willingness to address this issue.
Yeah.
I'll be really honest. I think I can be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. But the supply is so plentiful.
And the supply is easier to target. It's easier to prosecute a trafficker and focus on his misdeeds than all the faceless men who actually committed the sexual assaults.
Right. Right. And that doesn't seem to get real play until, there's this national, what is it, Epstein, the financier, when those things come out and people kind of look at it and go, oh, okay. But it's happening all the time.
All the time.
And everywhere. Mm-hmm. So I know that your journey has taken you out of the prosecution realm, and you're now, I should mention that Jennifer Williams is an attorney with Gruber Law. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
But you haven't totally left this.
No, I haven't. I'll be teaching a class at Marquette in the undergraduate sociology criminal justice department this spring on human trafficking in a special topics course context. I'm still very much committed to raising awareness and being truthful about what I saw and what I think the solutions are. My mother raised a girl who doesn't know how to keep her mouth shut.
And that's good for us.
Right. To have the trust of the victims that I was able to represent in a courtroom was probably one of the greatest honors of my professional life. And when I left the district attorney's office, I didn't want to. On my last day, I couldn't see in front of me the way out to my car because I was crying so hard.
Oh, wow. Because
I felt so guilty that all of the experience and the passion that I had for representing sexual assault victims, and now they weren't my clients in that sense, but representing their stories, trying to obtain some measure of justice and redress for what they had survived. I was walking out of that building taking it all with me. And it's hard to get that skill and the emotional stamina to try these cases with such awful stories and so much trauma. And, now that I work at Gruber, I'm so proud to work there and represent injured individuals who are fighting big corporations. It's the same kind of David and Goliath struggle that I really think as a person that I'm drawn to, but I'm just not willing to stay silent, especially when this whole Jeffrey Epstein case comes out where he really is the trafficker and the John.
Yeah.
And has this strange entitlement to, here, employee, go to a high school and bring me some girls, some teenagers, like he's ordering lunch to be delivered to him. It's appalling. It's disturbing. And I think that for some men in our society, it's very normal. They don't think twice about it.
I hope we can change that. I hope it changes. I really, really do.
I think that the one place that at least as women we can change it is doing everything we can. And I'm really also very active in trying to mentor as many young women as I can, that if you can figure out how to find the confidence and the self-worth in yourself instead of in a man or a relationship or the number of Instagram likes you have, that's the key. Because the victims that I met, there was nothing wrong with them except that they were vulnerable in some sense. And trafficker is like a shark. They can smell that blood in the water.
Right.
And once they smell the blood in the water, it doesn't matter who you are, where you came from, who your parents are, how involved they are in your life. It's over.
We're out of time. But when you think about what can we do, that's something we can do. We can be that influence in a young woman's life, and a young man's life as well.
Starting today.
Yeah, absolutely. Jennifer, thank you. Thank you
welcome.
so much for joining us. It's Jennifer Williams. She's an attorney with Gruber Law, former prosecutor of sex trafficking cases with the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office, and she joined us and grace us with a wealth of information and stories, and I can't thank you enough for coming.
Thank you, equally.
If you've heard something that you're really interested in, want more information on this topic, go to our website, www.the411live.org. You can also go to our Facebook page. You can check us out on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit us up on Instagram. What is it? Instagram TV. And remember that we are a nonprofit organization, so if you would like to help us with your donation, go to our website. We would greatly appreciate it. We think that this topic is really important, and we want to tell more of them, and your donation will help us to do that. There's so many things to talk about on this, and if you have a topic within the human trafficking realm that you would like us to address, go to our website, let us know, because we would love to hear from you. And of course, any more of your comments, we appreciate that too. So until next time, this is the 411 Live. Real people, real talk. I'm Beverly Taylor.